My name is Abel. I'm 29 years old, and the best beekeeper these hills ever grew put his life's work into my hands with his own shaking fingers, and I have spent every day since sure he chose the wrong man. Home was Sorrow Gap, a crease in the Ozark Hills where the roads gave up being straight a long time ago. There had been an apiary on the south slope of that hollow for 100 years, longer than the church, longer than the blacktop. I did not build it. I was not born to it. For most of my growing up, I did not even know it was there. The bees on that hill belonged to a man named Emory Teague, and how they came to belong to me is the story of the best thing that ever happened to me, and the thing I was most afraid I would be the one to ruin. I want to tell you about the wound first, because everything after it grew out of it, the way a whole hive grows out of one queen. I did not come from steady people. My father was gone before I could spell his name, and my mother did what she could, which was not always much. And by the time I was 17, I was the kind of young man a small town keeps half an eye on. Not bad. Just loose. I worked the sawmill, then the feed store, then a roofing crew, and I quit or got let go from every one of them. Not because I could not do the work, but because nothing ever gave me a reason to stay through the hard middle of it. I drifted the way water drifts, always downhill, always toward the easiest low place. Then the winter I turned 20, I took a day labor job hauling woodenware up a frozen slope for an old man, and the old man was Emory Teague. He was past 70 even then, small and bent and slow, with hands like knots of oak root and eyes that did not miss a thing. He watched me work for one morning. At noon, he handed me a cup of coffee from a dented thermos and said, "You're careless with your back and careful with the boxes." That's backwards, but it can be taught. And instead of paying me off at dark the way I expected, he told me to come back Monday. I came back Monday. I did not know it yet, but that was the first thing in my whole life I ever came back to. Emory taught me bees the way you would teach a language to a child, slow and daily, and without ever making a lesson of it. He taught me to open a hive like I was lifting the lid off something sleeping, to read the mood of a colony by its sound before I ever cracked the seal, to move so calm the bees forgot I was there. He taught me feeding and splits and requeening, mite counts and brood patterns, how to tell a laying worker from a failing queen, how to know by the weight of a box lifted an inch off the stand whether the colony inside would make the winter. He never raised his voice. When I did a thing wrong, and I did 1,000 things wrong, he would just say, "Now why do you suppose that didn't work?" and wait, and make me find it myself. 4 years I worked that hill beside him. It was the longest I had ever stayed anywhere, and somewhere in those 4 years, without either of us saying it, the drifting stopped. The bees had given me the one thing nothing else ever had. A reason to come back tomorrow. And there was one thing on that hill Emory loved above all the rest. Down near the house, in a hive he kept painted pale blue, lived a queen from a line his own grandmother had started 100 years before. Emory Teague her name was. She had set the first straw skep out under the sycamores back when this whole country was mule and lantern, and she had painted that skep by hand with little gold suns and green climbing vines, and she had bred her bees careful, keeping back the gentlest and the hardiest, year after year, mother to daughter to daughter. That skep sat on the mantel in the farmhouse still. It did not hold bees anymore. It held something harder to name. And every queen in every hive on that slope came down from the one queen who first lived inside it, an unbroken thread 100 years long. Emory called her the Mother Queen. She is the last of the oldest line in this valley, he told me once, holding a frame of her brood up to the light like a page of scripture. You cannot buy this, Abel. You cannot order it from a catalog. Lose her and she is gone off the earth. 100 years gone, for want of one careless winter. The stroke took Emory the spring I turned 24. It took the strength out of his right side, and most of the sureness out of his hands. The hands that could find an unmarked queen on a crowded frame in 10 seconds flat. He could not keep bees anymore. He could barely keep himself. His own children were long grown and long gone, off to cities that had no room for 100 hives, and they came home just long enough to move him into Cedar Rest, the care home over in the county seat, and to ask, gently, what was to be done about the bees. Emory did not sell them. He gave them to me. He had his lawyer draw it up while he could still sign his name. The whole apiary, the land, the woodenware, the 100-year line, deeded over to a rootless young man he had known 4 years, a man with no family in it and no blood claim to any of it. When they told me, I did not feel proud. That is the thing nobody understands about being handed something too big for you. I felt sick. I sat in my truck outside the care home and I could not breathe right, because I knew, the way you know a cold coming on, that Emory Teague had just handed 100 years of somebody's careful love to the least steady man in the county, and that I was going to be the one who dropped it. That was the fear I carried up the hill every single morning for the next 5 years. Not that the work was hard. The work I could do. The fear was that I was a fraud in another man's apiary, a hired hand who got handed a heritage, and that the line had survived 100 years and 2 world wars, and the Depression only to die on the watch of the one keeper who was never meant to have it. And then, the spring I turned 29, the thing I was most afraid of started coming true. It began quiet, the way the worst things do. In April, I started finding bees crawling in the grass in front of the hives, unable to fly, their wings shriveled and crumpled like wet paper. I knew what it was. Every beekeeper does now. Mites and the virus the mites carry, the thing that hollows a strong colony out from the inside, until one day you open a box that was boiling with life a month ago, and find a handful of confused stragglers and a queen wandering a comb full of the dead. It was moving through the whole county that spring. I heard it at the feed store, in the flat voices men use for bad news. Harlan Fiskup, the road lost 11 colonies in 3 weeks. The Pletcher place lost all 30. It came across the hills like a tide going out, and every yard it touched, it emptied. And then, the second week of April, on top of all of it, we got a frost. A killing one. It came in on a clear, cold night when the whole hollow was already white and pink with plum and redbud and wild cherry, when even my thinned and struggling bees were finally flying, heavy with the promise of the year. The temperature dropped like a stone down a well, and by morning every open blossom in the valley had gone brown and slack. A beekeeper reads a season the way other men read a bank statement. That morning I read ours, and it said there would be no honey crop worth the name. The bloom was dead. The flow was finished before it started. And a colony already weakened by the mites, going into a dead spring with nothing to forage, does not just limp along. It gives up. So there it was, the whole thing I had dreaded, arriving all at once. A sickness in the yard I could not cure with any amount of care, and a frost that took the food right off the table, and a 100-year line sitting down in a pale blue box at the bottom of the slope, and me, the wrong man, standing in the middle of it with a smoker in my hand, and no idea on God's earth how to save any of it. I did not go to see Emory that week. I could not. I could not sit in that clean, bright room at Cedar Rest and watch his good hand shake, and tell him that his grandmother's bees were dying, and it was happening on my watch. That was where I was, the lowest I had been in years, when a truck I did not know came up my lane on a gray Tuesday, and a woman got out who was about to change the shape of everything. Her name was Iris. She was about my age, maybe a year past it, with dark hair pulled back rough and a canvas jacket gone soft with real work. She did not look like a tourist come for a cute jar of honey. She looked like a woman who had driven a long way and slept in the truck to save the motel money. In the bed of her pickup, strapped down under a tarp, were a dozen small wooden nucleus hives and a load of gear I recognized, the tools of somebody who worked bees for a living but did not keep a home yard of her own. "You're the Teague apiary," she said. Not a question. The old survivor line. I have been trying to find it for 2 years. I asked her who she was. She told me, and she made a face at her own job title, like it was too big for what she actually did. Iris was a pollination researcher, working on contract for a growers' cooperative 3 counties wide, surveying the collapse that was eating the region's bees, running trials on which colonies lived and which died and why. She drove from yard to yard all season with her knucks and her notebooks, placing bees, counting mites, chasing the one thing everybody in her line of work was desperate for that year. Survivor stock. Bees that did not die. There's a rumor, she said, that runs back 30 years in the extension notes. An old line up a hollow in Sorrel Gap that never gets treated and never crashes. Everybody thinks it's a story. I don't think it's a story. I think somebody up here has been quietly sitting on the most valuable genetics in the state and selling their honey for $4 a jar. She looked past me, up the slope at the hives. I would like to find out if I'm right. I'll work for the access. I can lift, I can drive, I can do a mite wash faster than you can and read it more honestly. I don't need much. I just need to see those bees. Every reason I had said no. I was ashamed of the yard, ashamed of the crawling bees in the grass, ashamed to have a real scientist walk my rows and see how far under I was going. The old drifting part of me, the part that never stayed for the hard middle, wanted to tell her the line was nothing special and send her back down the lane. But she was already looking up that hill, the way Emory used to look at a good frame of brood. Like it mattered, like it was worth something. And nobody had looked at that hill that way since the stroke. "It's a bad year to come looking," I said. "The collapse is in my yard too. And the frost killed the flow. I don't know what you'll find alive by June." "Then let me help you keep it alive," she said, simple as that, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I took her on. Except you could not really call it hiring, since I had nothing to pay her with. I gave her the spare room in the farmhouse and a share of whatever the season left us, which we both understood might be nothing, and she gave me the first thing I had not had in 5 years of carrying that hill alone. Another set of hands that knew what they were doing, and another set of eyes that believed the thing on that slope was worth the trouble of saving. We went through the whole yard together that first week, hive by hive, and it was worse than I had let myself see alone. Better to have the truth than the dread, Iris said, and she was right, though the truth was hard. 2/3 of the packaged colonies, the ones I had bought in over the years to build the numbers up, were failing or already gone, crawling with mites, riddled with the virus. But then we got down the slope to the old ones, the daughters of the mother line, Effie's blood, and they were alive. Not just alive, working calm clean. Iris knelt in front of the pale blue hive for a long time that afternoon, just watching the bees come and go, and then she said, quiet, "Abel, come look at this." I knelt down beside her, and she showed me a thing I had watched my whole beekeeping life and never once understood I was watching. On the landing board, a worker was dragging a mite off the back of another bee and biting it clean in two. All along the entrance, the bees were grooming each other, snapping the mites off, hauling out the sick larvae before the virus could ripen in them, keeping their own house clean the way no colony I ever bought from a catalog knew how to do. Hygienic behavior, Iris said, and her voice had gone careful with wonder. It's heritable. Effie bred it into them 100 years ago and never knew the word for it. She just kept the hives that lived and culled the ones that didn't over and over for 100 years. She looked at me. This isn't luck, Abel. This is the most stubborn survival I have ever seen in a bee. Your line doesn't crash because it was never taught how to give up. That night we sat on the porch steps in the cool, both of us wrung out, and I said the thing I had been carrying so long it had worn a groove in me. I meant it light. I always do when a thing gets too close. Well, I said, at least the bees are worth something. More than the man they got left to. Emory handed his grandmother's 100 years to the wrong man, and I've spent 5 years just waiting for everybody to find out. Iris did not laugh. She set down her cup and looked at me a long moment, long enough that I felt it. He didn't hand them to the wrong man, she said. He handed them to the one who stayed. Do you have any idea how many people would have sold this line for the price of the land the week that stroke hit him? Somebody born to it even. Blood doesn't keep a thing alive, Abel. Showing up every morning keeps it alive. He watched you do that for 4 years. He didn't pick you because you were the safe choice. He picked you because you were the one who came back. She looked out at the dark hill. You're not the wrong man. You're just the one who hasn't believed the old man yet. I did not have an answer for that. I sat there with my heart going sideways and understood that a woman had just looked at the one thing I was most ashamed of and called it the whole reason the line was still alive. The next weeks were a strange mix of hope and dread laid right on top of each other. The old line was surviving, that much was real. But surviving is not the same as thriving, and it is a long way from either one to solve it. The frost had killed the honey. Whatever the survivor colonies made that year, they would need to keep just to live. There would be almost nothing to sell. And the bank did not care that my bees were a scientific marvel. The note on Emory's land came due in the fall the same as it did every fall, and for the first time, I could not see how I was going to meet it. Harlan Fisk came by one evening to look at the old line, because word had gotten around that the Teague bees were holding. He stood at the fence a long while, this good beekeeper who had just watched 30 years of his own work die in a month, and he shook his head. It ain't right, he said, not unkind, just tired. I did everything by the book. Treated on the calendar, fed on the calendar, did it all correct. And I'm burning boxes this week. You did nothing, and you're the last yard standing in the hollow. He looked at me. Emory always said that line would outlive us all. I used to think that was just an old man talking. He spat in the dust. Reckon he knew something. I finally went to see Emory in May. I had put it off as long as I could stand to. I found him by the window in his chair, smaller every time, his right hand curled in his lap, and I did not know how to tell him the county was collapsing, and I might lose the land. So I told him about the mites and the frost and the failing packages, and I watched his face, and I waited for the disappointment. It did not come. His good hand found mine on the arm of the chair, and his speech came slow and thick since the stroke, but it came clear enough. The old line, he said, Effie's. How's she holding? Holding, I said. Better than holding. There's a researcher staying on, Emory. She says our bees are doing a thing, this grooming, this cleaning, and she says it's why they never crash. She says Effie bred it into them, without ever knowing the name for it. Something came up in his face then, something I can only call peace, and he squeezed my hand with what strength he had. "I told you," he said. "I told you they don't quit. You keep them the way I showed you, and they will carry you, son. They will carry you through a worse year than this one." His eyes were wet. "You quit calling yourself the wrong man. I heard you thinking it the first day I met you, and I hear you thinking it now. I had 4 years to watch every man in this county walk past that hill. Only one of them kept coming back up it." He tapped my hand with one crooked finger once for each word. I picked right. The night everything turned came at the end of May, and it was another frost that brought it. A late one, freakish and cruel, the kind of thing the old-timers say happens once in a generation. The forecast came in on a bright, warm afternoon, a hard freeze rolling down out of the north for the coming night, 26 degrees predicted in the low ground by 3 in the morning. For most years and most yards, it would have meant a bad night for the garden, and nothing worse. But my surviving colonies were still thin from the collapse, their numbers down, and a weak colony cannot keep itself warm the way a strong one can. And down at the bottom of the slope, in the lowest, coldest pocket of the whole farm, where the cold air pools like water on a still night, sat the pale blue hive. The mother queen, the last of Effie's line, in the exact spot the frost would hit hardest. "She'll cluster," Iris said, "but she's low on bees. If it gets as cold as they're saying and it holds long enough, a cluster that small can't hold its heat. She could freeze on the comb. The whole line, Abel." In one night, we worked from dark to dawn. There was no one thing that saved it, just 100 small stubborn things done in the cold. We wrapped the weak hives in tar paper and old quilts and straw bales, and built windbreaks out of plywood and hay against the draw of the cold air down the slope. We ran an extension cord the length of the yard, and set a heat lamp low and safe under a wooden hood by the entrances of the 2 weakest colonies. And the mother queen, the pale blue hive too precious to gamble on tar paper and hope, we moved. We got a hand truck under her in the dark, and we walked her up out of that frost pocket one slow step at a time, the box heavy between us, the bees roaring low in the walls of it, up the slope to the honey house where the wood stove was going, and we set her in the warm, and we sat down on the floor beside her, and we did not sleep. It got down to 24 that night, colder than they said. We went out every hour with a flashlight and our breath smoking, checking the wraps, feeding the stove, listening at the entrances for the sound a cluster makes, that low, steady hum that means alive. Near 4 in the morning, at the coldest hour, Iris put her ear to the pale blue box in the warm honey house, and her shoulders came down, and she looked up at me, and she was crying and smiling at once. "She's singing," she said. "She's still singing." And I got down on the floor and put my own ear to Effie's 100 years and heard it, the warm, alive hum of a line that would not quit. And I put my face in my hands, this rootless drifting man who never once stayed for the hard middle of anything, and I stayed. I stayed all the way to the dawn. When the sun finally came up and warmed the world back over freezing, we carried the mother queen back down to her place, and we walked the yard together in the gold light and found every colony alive. Weak, some of them, worn from the cold, but alive. Not one had frozen. Iris leaned on the fence in the sunrise with an exhausted kind of joy on her face, and I looked at this woman who had spent a whole night on a cold floor to keep a stranger's bees breathing, and I understood I was not carrying that hill alone anymore. I do not think I had known, until that morning, how heavy alone had been. That was the night the fear broke. Not because the trouble was over, because it was not. We had saved the bees. We had not saved the farm. The honey crop was still dead, the note was still coming, and a yard full of live bees that make no honey does not pay a bank. I said as much, sitting on the tailgate a few mornings later, doing the same broke arithmetic I had done 100 times. And Iris, wiping the might-wash alcohol off her hands, stopped and looked at me like I had said something slow. "Abel," she said, "you are sitting here trying to sell honey in the worst honey year in a decade, and you are surrounded by the one thing this whole region is about to be down on its knees begging for, and you cannot see it." "And what's that?" I said. "Live bees," she said. "Strong, healthy, disease-resistant colonies. Do you understand what just happened in these hills? The collapse didn't only take honey. It took pollinators. Every orchard and truck farm and berry field for 50 miles just watched its bees die. The Emittens have 40 acres of apples that won't set fruit without hives in the rows. The Cleary place has melons, the Dukes have blueberries, and there is not a healthy colony to rent within 3 counties because they all crashed." She stood up. "Except yours. You don't have a honey operation this year, Abel. You have the only living pollination fleet left standing in the hollow. So stop trying to sell the honey the frost took. Start renting out the bees the collapse just made priceless." I sat there and felt the whole shape of the thing turn over in my head. My entire life in bees, Emory's whole life before me, we had measured the worth of that hill in pounds of honey. Fat commodity years, thin ones always honey. It had never once occurred to me that in a year the honey died, the bees themselves, the living, stubborn, surviving bees, could be the crop. That the very thing everyone else had just lost was the exact thing I still had. Iris was already reaching for her notebook, already 3 counties deep in the network she had been driving all season. Every grower she had met who was standing in a dead orchard doing the same desperate math I was. The next weeks were the hardest work I had ever done, and the best. Iris knew everyone. She had spent 2 seasons driving these hills, placing research nucks and counting dead outs, and she knew which grower had lost what and who was frantic. She made the calls. I loaded bees. We moved the strong survivor colonies out of the home yard on the flatbed in the cool dark before dawn, veils down, entrances screened, and we set them in rows down the middle of the Emitten orchard while the apple blossom was still tight. And 3 days later that orchard was roaring, every tree working. The bees Effie bred 100 years ago pollinating fruit that would have dropped for want of them. When the apples finished, we moved to the Cleary melons, and then the Duke's blueberries, and word ran ahead of us the way word does in hard country. The Teague bees, the line that lived, the only healthy hives in the hollow, and the young man and the bee scientist who brought them. I wrote contracts on the tailgate of my truck. Real ones, with real numbers per hive, per bloom. The growers glad to pay it because bees that set a crop are worth 100 times what bees that do not cost, and there were no other bees to be had. By the middle of the summer, I had done the arithmetic 6 new ways and every one of them came out the same. And the answer, for the first time in 5 years, was not broke. The pollination money did what the honey never could have in a dead year. It paid the note on Emory's land. It paid it clean, with enough left to build the yard back stronger, to raise new colonies off the survivor line, daughters of the mother queen, hygienic and hardy, to sell as the very survivor stock every desperate keeper in 3 counties was now begging Iris for. Because that was the other thing. It was not just my farm the old line saved. By August, Iris had a waiting list of beekeepers who wanted queens bred off Effie's 100 years, off the one line in the county that grooms out its own mites and hauls out its own sick and refuses, generation after generation, to die. The thing Emory's grandmother did in the dark of the last century, keeping only the hives that lived, was suddenly the most wanted thing in the hills. I was not the man who let the line die. I turned out to be the man who was standing there holding it, ready. On the 1 year the whole world came looking for exactly what it was. I brought Emory out to the hill in September. His children were nervous about it, but I had a wide seat in the truck and Iris on the other side of him, and we drove him slow up the lane he had walked 10,000 times, and we set his chair in the gold light at the top of the slope where he could see the whole yard humming below him, the survivor colonies fat and strong, the new nucs in their rows, the pale blue hive down by the sycamores where it had always been. He did not say much. He did not need to. He sat there a long time with his good hand resting on the arm of the chair, watching his grandmother's bees carry on, watching them outlive him the way he had always meant them to. Then he looked over at me, and his slow voice came thick and certain. "You kept the line," he said. "We kept it," I said, and I meant Iris, and I meant him, and I meant 100 years of women and men who kept the hives that lived. But he shook his head, slow, and tapped the arm of the chair with one crooked finger. "You kept the line," he said again. "I gave it to the right man. I always knew it. Took you long enough to know it too." And then he smiled, the whole undamaged half of his face lifting with it, and he said the thing that finally set down the weight I had carried up that hill every morning for 5 years. "You're not the hired hand, son. You're the keeper. You have been since the day you came back on a Monday, when I never paid you to." He held on a good while yet, Emory did. Long enough for what came after. Iris did not leave when the season ended. It happened slow, the way the truest things do, the way a hive fills, one careful cell at a time. First it was that her contract with the co-op ran out, and she did not go looking for the next one. Then it was that the spare room quietly stopped being the spare room. Then it was a second notebook on the kitchen table next to mine, and her boots by my door, and a breeding program we were building together off Effie's line, the two of us up to our elbows in the work that had become, somewhere along the way, our work. One evening late in the fall, we were down by the sycamores closing up the Mother Queen's hive against the coming cold, the whole valley gone gold and red around us, and I finally said the thing I had been holding. "I don't want you to move on to the next yard," I said. "I don't want this to be a season. I've spent my whole life being the man who drifts to the next low place, and I don't want to be him anymore. I want to stay here with you. If you'll have a rootless man who only just learned how." Iris looked at me a long moment in the low gold light, and then she reached up and put her hand along my jaw, and she smiled the way she had smiled the night the Mother Queen sang through the frost. "Abel," she said, "I have spent 2 years driving from one dying yard to the next, looking for the one line that knew how to hold on. Do you really think, now that I've finally found it, I was ever going to leave?" We were married the next spring, out under the sycamores, when the plum and the redbud and the wild cherry came back the way they always do, the way they had come back 100 springs before us. It was a small thing, and a quiet one, just a handful of people who mattered on the green slope in the good light. Harlan Fisk stood up for me and cried and blamed it on the pollen. Iris wore her grandmother's dress and no veil, because she said a beekeeper had worn enough veils for 2 lifetimes, and she wanted the sun on her face, and the sun came out and gave it to her. And Emory was there, in his chair at the top of the slope where he could see the whole yard. Effie's skep set on the table beside him with its faded gold suns and green vines. The oldest thing on that hill brought out into the light to watch the newest thing begin. When it came time, I pushed his chair down the mown aisle myself, slow, the two of us together, the keeper and the man who taught him how. If you had told the loose, careless boy I used to be that he would one day be the steady thing at the center of a day like that, he would not have believed you. I would not have believed you. I did not stay anywhere. Until I did. Emory went the following winter, quiet in his sleep, with the snow coming down soft over the hollow and his grandmother's lying safe on the hill above him. I like to think he knew it was safe. I am as sure of it as I am of anything. He had spent his whole life keeping something so that it would outlast him, and it did, and he got to see it, and there are worse things to be able to say about a life than that. I am a little older now than I was when this story turned. The yard is strong. We run 80 colonies off the survivor line, and we contract them out every spring to the orchards, and the melon fields and the berry rows all across the hills. And we sell queens and nucks to keepers who drive from 3 states over for a daughter of Effie's blood. The mother queen down by the sycamores is not the same individual bee, of course. Queens do not live 100 years, but the line is unbroken. Her daughter carries it now, and her daughter after her will, mother to daughter to daughter. The last queen never really the last, only the newest link in a chain that has refused for 100 years to end. I spent so much of my life believing that the men who matter are the ones a thing belongs to by right. The blood son, the born to it, the one with a claim. I was sure, the day Emory signed his grandmother's 100 years over to a drifter with no roots and no right, that he had made the one great mistake of a careful life, and that I would be the proof of it. I had it exactly backward, because a thing does not belong to the one it was born to. It belongs to the one who keeps it. It belongs to whoever gets up in the cold dark and puts their ear to the box to hear if it is still singing, whoever moves the heavy thing up out of the frost pocket one slow step at a time, whoever stays through the killing frost and the collapse and the low broke arithmetic and does not, will not, let go. Blood is an accident. Keeping is a choice. You make it again every single morning, or you do not make it at all. Emory Teague looked at a loose, unweighted young man who had never once stayed for the hard middle of anything, and he did not see what I was. He saw what I could be trusted to become. He handed me 100 years and bet his grandmother's whole unbroken line that I would rise to the weight of it. And for 5 years, I called that bet a mistake because I was too afraid to be worth it. It was never a mistake. It was the truest thing anyone ever saw in me. He trusted me with the one thing he loved most in the world, and in the end that trust was not a burden I had to survive. It was the making of me. The skep still sits on the mantle, Effie's gold suns worn soft, her green vines climbing toward nothing and everything. Some evenings Iris takes it down and turns it over in her hands, and we talk about the woman 100 years gone who kept the hives that lived, and the old man who kept them after her, and the line that ran down all those careful hands to end up, of all the places on earth, in ours. It could have died a dozen times. It could have died the year the mites came, and the frost killed the flow, and the wrong man stood in the middle of it with a smoker in his hand. It did not, because somebody stayed to keep it. That is the whole of what I know now. Somebody has to stay and keep the thing. It might as well be the one who was trusted to. Would you have fought that hard to keep something someone trusted to you?